Welcome back, everybody. This is Rodrigo Fonador with another episode of Asheville Real Estate News. Before we get started, just want to remind everybody that this show is brought to you by American IRA, your local IRA custodian here in Asheville. Today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, a topic that you're going to find a lot of people's opinions on, and we're going to hopefully just talk a little bit about that, talk with somebody who's got a lot of experience in this topic, and explore the ins and outs and some of the difficulties that are associated with attempting to solve this. The topic today is going to be affordable housing here in Asheville. And well, without further ado, let me bring on Kirk Booth to the show. Kirk, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about affordable housing here in Asheville, which is definitely a little bit of a loaded topic. But before we get into that, do you mind giving everybody a little bit of background on who you are and how you got into real estate to begin with?
Sure. My parents were in real estate when I was growing up, and so I had a lot of experience in dealing with hearing certain terms and houses and contracts, and especially people, which that's what we really deal with.
Yep.
And so as I grew up, I went on out of Asheville. I'm from Asheville, and went to be a corporate pilot for some years, then came back and got into real estate full time. And since then, I've worked in residential real estate. I've managed brokerage companies and such, but at some point we started developing housing, and mainly housing on infill city lots, where we could buy a lot, put a house that's affordable, and I'm talking like $110,000 for a house in West Asheville.
Yeah. And that's still not possible, right?
That is probably not possible today.
Yeah.
So that way, I had the whole market.
Right.
We had investors, we had first-time home buyers, we had parents buying houses for their kids, we've had whoever wants to invest in real estate, we had the product. Brand new house in the city for an affordable price.
Right.
So we did that, then we started doing some subdivisions and such, and had success. And then when 2008 came, we had a subdivision going we were very successful in, but one of our least priced homes wasn't even getting shown.
Oh, wow.
And this was about towards the end of 2007.
Okay.
And I said, something's happening.
Right.
So we kind of stopped building. We re-looked at what we were doing. We decided that if we're going to do anything now, we'd do maybe just do affordable housing and keep it and rent it. So we started looking into funding. How can we get funding for this in 2008, which was almost unheard of. But there were certain programs out there that we took advantage of, and that allowed us to start building houses more in like a cluster. We did some cottage developments here in the city. We did some, 2 houses, 4 houses, 6 houses, wherever we could find the lots and try to make it
feasible,
dense enough to work financially.
Okay. So the major shift into what you're doing now versus what you were doing before was 2008. Then you went from basically doing like new construction, spec building, to developing, building, and then holding on to rental with the purpose of affordable housing.
Correct.
So what is, it's always interesting to hear what everybody's opinion of affordable housing is. How do you define it for your all's purposes?
Well, affordable housing basically is based on income.
Right.
So you'll hear a lot of terms like the average mean income and a certain percentage of that. So you have 100% of the average mean income, which may mean to some people workforce housing, or 80%, 60% and below. And that just really it's determined by the person's income. So if I offer a product at 60% of the average mean income, that means that for one person, it's probably somewhere around $25,000 is the most you can make to be able to rent that unit with a certain type of funding that I have.
Gotcha. So what type of funding do you have? What is the funding that you found in 2008?
Well, we did some research, and the City of Asheville has some programs that incentivize developers to build affordable housing. So it's an application process, then it's vetted by financial people and others, and then they have a meeting and determine who gets what, because there's only so much money. I think the city council decided to put X amount in, and then that was given out to certain developers with certain projects. And then the next year, it went on and on. So we were fortunate enough to have a project that was ready to go, had permits pulled and such that our first attempt at it worked, and we got some funding. So the funding, though, is a help to more traditional financing, which would be a bank loan or some other type of loan that developers would get.
So is the funding, do you have to pay it back and it's just on friendly terms, or it's just money that they're putting into the project in exchange for some sort of deed restrictions or something?
It is a loan.
It's a loan, okay.
It's a loan that has to be paid back. And there's advantages to certain interest rates and over time and things of that nature, but it is a loan. But they may decide to go in second position behind
your primary
other money.
That, I'm sure, is super helpful, right?
It's super helpful if you can get the first. And the problem becomes where developers, which I've seen, developers have a great project, they make an application, they may get funding, but they still have to get the first. And that first is very difficult.
Why is that still difficult now, or was it just difficult then? Because it seems now, and it seems like everybody wants to get in on investing on real estate right now. It seems that if you're in a first position, if it's a sound project, that it would be easier, or at least easy-ish to line up funding. But I guess that's not the case right now.
Well, it depends on the developer and if they're bankable. As we've known each other for a long time, we've met a lot of people who are not bankable but do a lot of transactions. So if you want to get this first money and all that, you have to keep up your records, your financials, present it in a way that people can understand it. Your tax returns, you have to understand those as well as your accountant does. So you really have to be on your game to be able to get the first, and some people just can't get it together.
So got to get all the ducks in a row then.
Correct.
So throughout the 2008, I guess 2009, now it's basically been 10 years. What has transpired? Are there any differences with your approach to affordable housing and your interactions with the city around it versus, then it wasn't as big of an issue as it is now? Have things changed to make it easier to build, or money easier terms, or anything like that?
I think that it was the same then.
Okay.
It's been a crisis. That's what people have termed our situation here in Asheville for affordable housing. It's a crisis. And that's because most people, as you know, if we go get a loan if you go to buy a house, there's some ratios. So, and that ratio is probably anywhere, maybe the back end ratio up to 39%. Well, people in Asheville are paying at least half of their income for housing. Therefore, they spend another 25% on transportation. That really only leaves them 25% to live. So if you can't find a place to live for even half your income, it's an issue.
The ripple effect of that is huge.
So what's changed in my world since 2008 is back then we were still doing infill lots, cottage development, 6 houses on 3 lots, maybe adding, what we did, we went to single houses to a house with an ADU.
Gotcha, okay.
So that increased our density on a lot. And then, but the lots that started in 2013, the bank said, we're back in the game. So some spec builders that were still left and could started buying lots and land.
And so land prices.
So then the land prices went up, and we could no longer afford to buy a lot to build a house that's deemed affordable rent-wise, because everything we do, as you know, is backed in from the rent side. So we started having to go to higher density. So the project we're on right now is a 70-unit project of all 1-bedrooms. With a 60% AMI. So our average rent is $650 for a 1-bedroom brand new apartment.
That's a good number.
Yes.
Yeah. How, with it being, the crisis now, were you saying that it was a crisis back then, or it's evolved into a crisis? I
think it was as much then and has escalated.
Okay. It's just been more front issue, more people are talking about it and everything.
Let's say that I buy a lot for $15,000. Those lots could be selling for $60,000
now,
So if you're a spec builder and you pay $60,000 for a lot, what's your price point of your house going to be?
It's going to have to be, you can't rent it out at.
You can't rent it for $1,000.
No way.
So therefore, you're going to sell it for $330,000 to $50,000 to $75,000 and make money as a spec builder and move on. There's no way for me to go buy a $60,000 lot. Because then we've got a water meter, we've got a septic tap, sewer tap, and therefore that's another $15,000 probably, and you're just now you're at 75
before you even start building,
and that's not even grading.
Yeah. So what is the solution from your opinion? I mean, I know you talked to the city, or you've been working with them for a long time, so you probably have a pretty good pulse on, is the solution to just do what you're doing and just do larger builds and just, I'm guessing you're probably a little bit further out from the city than what you used to be doing, so you're building out a bit. Is that what it's going? Or?
Well, I would say that the solution is many faceted, and the key thing is that controls it is the land cost. So I believe the city is trying to use some of their inventory that they own to incentivize developers to build on that land they already own.
Right.
Therefore, the land cost may be controlled by them with certain stipulations.
Gotcha.
And understand, not all developers, most developers are in it to rent it for as much as they can.
Right.
To make as much as they can. And what we do is to try to offer an affordable product where we may make a little bit of money, but it's not near what it would be if we charged double the rent.
Yeah, not going to be market.
Correct.
So I have two questions. One is, why did you decide to do this approach with the experience that you had and the knowledge that you had? You could have been doing probably a variety of other things, but you've chosen this path. And then two, what do you say to somebody who's thinking about going down this path and working with the city and getting funding with the city? What do they need to be prepared with specifically about working with the city?
Well, the first one is, say it again.
Why did you choose to focus on building affordable housing?
What we did is we always were in this range of kind of affordable type product price-wise.
Right.
Even if we were selling it below the average mean, which in this town has always been, until the last few years, about $225,000.
Right.
That was the mean average house price, which is it's higher now.
Yeah.
So we were always, even in a subdivision I did in South Asheville, somewhere about 225 or less. So that was something that we've always kind of done, and we've just tried to stay there. It's just trying to keep up with the market.
Right.
Because you have so many friends, I have so many friends, our friends have friends, they find a deal, they're going to buy it.
Yeah.
And the problem we have now is people are buying property that don't make any sense.
We've seen that, yes.
If you have a sixplex, a fourplex, they're paying way more than the rent would cover the mortgage and the expenses.
Right.
So therefore, there's no way for you to play in that market.
You have to push it as hard and as high as you can.
Right. As far as somebody starting out, you really have to understand and read applications and submit an application with actual numbers that make sense. They will help you, and that's not just the city. Right. There's other funding out there that, the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency, and there's other avenues and options out there but any of those are going to require some type of application that's based on numbers. Therefore, what is your rents? So if your rents are this, that's going to tell you how much you can do a project for.
Gotcha.
Just like if you were buying an apartment complex. Right. What's the rents? How much is it per unit? And people want to go to cap rates, but cap rates are what's involved in that. So therefore, if you can find somebody who has some background or some information and can pull it all together, has a relationship with a financial institution other than a city, a county, a North Carolina Housing Finance, even some hard money people, you still have to have that first mortgage or some cash to get in.
Right, to get the project going.
And then why would they do it? Why would they offer it affordable?
Well, and that's kind of, I guess, what I'm kind of my first question a couple minutes ago is it seems like you have to be okay doing what you're doing, or people who work with you, of giving up profits to a certain degree. Of just because if you have the experience to build, you're choosing to build and working with the city on lots that don't cost $60, but it doesn't mean you can't can't build on a lot that costs $60 and do a traditional spec house. So
right. I guess it comes down to your philosophy.
Right.
So of course in investing, that's really, it's not about money, it's about your philosophy. So I'm from here. I love the town, I love the area. My mom was a school teacher. So providing housing for people is truly something I want to do. and that they can afford to do. We have people who are students. We have veterans that have made a turn in their life and need a place to stay. We have people that have been homeless. We have divorcees. We have people coming to the area that are making a second career. There's a lot of different walks of life that we help. We have families that we help. We have families that have two people in it, maybe a mother and child, a man and a child, and then down to the one bedroom where you have a single person. So we offer housing to a whole array of different people who really, if we don't produce it, they're not going to be able to be here.
Right. So then this is something that you're just genuinely passionate about and have belief in then.
Yes. Because it's truly hard to produce. And it's getting harder and harder because there's a lot of regulation.
Well, kind of leads me to what I was going to say is, well, it sounds like, would it be fair to say that you feel that you've had good support from the City of Asheville in your projects that you've been doing? I mean, obviously you've been working with them for 10 years, so I imagine that it's been a positive experience for you.
It's been positive. You just have to go by the rules. So.
And I'm sure that with anything that's involved with anything that's government, there are a lot of hoops to jump through, and it gets easier the more times you do it because you learn the process.
You hope.
You hope. Fair enough. As you look forward, the next 10 years, do you envision yourself doing the same thing, working with the city, or do you feel things are changing that you're going to have to make another change similar to what you did in 2008?
Well, there's lots of affordable opportunities with a lot of other types of people. Low income tax credits. That's really what large investment groups or nonprofits will try to get is the low income tax credit. Which there's two versions of that. There's a 9% and a 4%. The 4% is a little bit easier to get. But it's a lot of bureaucracy, lots of applications. The state probably gets 300 applicants a year, and they fund maybe 48.
Oh, wow.
So, and that's a lot of different rules and regulations and management issues, and it's only for so long. So there's opportunity in that area. This new thing that's just come up, this opportunity zones, is another thing for investors who have sold a property. They want a 1031 into an opportunity zone. They hold it for so long, and then their tax may be different than if you just did a normal 1031. So all these avenues are still open to me. I've explored them. It's just on how far out. If I try to do a low-income tax credit project, it takes me 5 years to get funding because I miss it. Well, what could I have produced during that 5 years?
Yeah, what's the opportunity cost of that?
Could I have built 4 houses? Could I have built 50 apartments? So therefore, it depends on what you're looking for, and really determines on how well you can find land to make all this happen. That's the key to this whole thing.
Yeah. Well, as we wrap up here, if somebody's thinking or wanting to get involved in affordable housing, is the route to go, and they're passionate about it like you are, is the route to go to try to develop, or are there other ways to kind of contribute to it, if you will?
Well, you could try to develop it. Or there's also things for sale. I mean, there are properties with government loans that have stipulations that will still be there because they are a deed restriction that you have to follow, in which if you want to make an investment, you could buy that product because the money is somewhat guaranteed by HUD. And therefore, you're providing affordable housing to people, and it's a long-term situation. I think what happens with a lot of us in real estate investing is we want a quick turn of money. And another thing with me is I'm in it for the long haul. So as the money may come in slower, I'm going to be here as far as I can,
or whatever,
or my kids or whomever, to where that money's always there. Instead of saying we're going to make this apartment complex, we're going to charge market rents, we're going to make as much as we can,
try to get our money
and then we're
back,
going to sell it to him, and then we're just going to get out.
Right.
So I'm here for more of a long-term situation. And that's really when we build our stuff, we want to build it with materials that last, that are strong to hold up to.
You don't want to be doing repairs 2 years after you build something. Or
correct.
Whatever. Yeah.
It's like do you want to use carpet or do you want to use something else?
Yeah.
So those are the things that I think when people look at going into affordable housing, there's a lot of reasons to do it, and really what's your financial position? Is it smart to do it? It may not be something that you want to do.
Yeah.
But there are avenues out there and the good studies to look into to see if you want to do it. It probably would be easier maybe in other areas.
Yeah.
Because Asheville, I think, is one of the top, in some new magazine article all the time, we're the top place to do business or what have you.
Live. Yeah.
So when you see that and it really gets going, then that's when people start buying, and then the prices go up.
Yep, and they've been doing that.
Yep.
Well, last question here. You talked about affordable housing, and you referenced this as far as when you talked about what tenants you had. It sounds like you work with programs like Homeward Bound, Section 8. I know that there's, we personally like Homeward Bound a lot, but do you have any words of advice to somebody who's on the fence about that or a little tentative about working with government-backed, housing? Because there are certain stigmas out there.
Yes. Used to, long ago, there was a real bad thinking about, say, Section 8 tenants. And I'm going back to like a generation before me or two. And no, we can't do that. They'll tear your place apart. Well, the fact is that any tenant will tear your place apart.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter they're people.
Part of the risk.
Right. So what I like about Section 8 is on the 2nd of every month, you get a direct deposit into your bank account of some amount. Of course, the tenant may have to pay some as well.
Right.
But the majority of it is probably paid to you directly. If the tenant loses their job, they tell their people they'll pay all the rent.
Right.
Therefore, I'm not out. I'm not throwing them out because they can't make their rent. It's covered.
Yeah.
So, oh, by the way, you have to have an inspection every 2 years now. Some people don't like having inspections because they have to fix things.
Yeah.
Well, I want to fix things because I want it to be there as long as possible. Homeward Bound is a great organization.
Yeah.
When the best thing about them, besides writing you a check every month, is they have somebody to help the tenant.
Right.
So if the tenant starts to feel like they're going off the rails, as we all do at some point, they have a worker to call that can come talk to them and help them.
That's probably been our favorite thing about working with Homeward
Of course,
Bound,
and I mean, we do a lot with Homeward Bound, and they're renting various types of programs in our new apartments of 1 bedrooms, and hey, we all may need a little help from now and then. So that's something that is important. And other organizations are the same way that are in town that have people that they basically have support.
Right.
The tenant has support. And if the tenant has support, the tenant's going to stay there longer because we have to find out what maybe the problem is.
Right.
Either I or the worker or whoever that person may be can help the tenant get over that. Therefore, housing is still provided to them.
Yep.
Because if we don't keep them in housing, then it just costs all of us more money because that person may be back on the street.
Right.
They may be back in a VA shelter or worse or whatever, to where even people who qualify for Section 8, people really don't understand that's a 2-year wait once you put an application in. So how many people do you know put an application in, are willing to wait for 2 years and then comply with all the rules, and then you only have, I think, 60 days to place your voucher and have to call up a guy like me and say, hey, do you have anything available? And I say, we only have this right now. Maybe that's a 3-bedroom. Maybe that's a 1-bedroom and you need a 2-bedroom. Well, if I'm providing a lot of that type of housing, I don't have it, that could be discouraging.
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't understand that it's a process that's hard to go through to get on these programs. Not that it's impossible, but you do have to comply with rules and to do things that sometimes people don't want to do. But as far as a landlord, that's why I do these things, because it provides the tenant to be in your unit longer, which therefore that's what we all want.
Absolutely. Well, Kirk, thanks so much for being on the show. Any parting words about anything that we talked about?
I think you're doing a great thing. Awesome. I looked at a few past interviews and
appreciate it.
It's pretty enlightening. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. All right, you guys. Thanks so much for joining in. See you all next Tuesday for another episode. If you have any questions, just let us know in the comments below. We'll try to get them all answered out. And as a reminder, April's meetup is going to be on April 10th, not the first Wednesday. So hope to see you all out there. Take care.